The truth about why I'm glad I left Chattanooga for Northeast Tennessee. If you've been thinking about making a move to Tennessee, is Chattanooga one of the cities you're considering? How about Northeast Tennessee? I spent over 20 years living and working in the Chattanooga metro area, much of that time as a real estate agent. And I'm here to share with you why I'm glad I left Chattanooga a few years back and moved back to Northeast Tennessee. There are a lot of similarities in the two areas, but quite a few very important differences that you should know about before making a decision on where you want to live. Tennessee is a big state and it gives you a lot of options. Big cities, medium cities, and the small towns, and which area you choose will make a big difference in your quality of life. Some people are looking for the more laid-back rural lifestyle, while others are looking for an active music scene and nightlife, while others just want to be more in touch with the outdoors. Right now, a higher percentage of people are moving to East Tennessee versus other parts of the state. If you look at the ratio of people moving to an area versus those leaving, the top 3 cities are in the eastern part of the state. Number 1 is Chattanooga, number 2 is Johnson City, which is in Northeast Tennessee, and number 3 is Knoxville, which is tied with Nashville, and it's always been a hot spot for transplants. So for every 100 people that leave Chattanooga, 300 are moving in. Johnson City brings in 273 for every 100 that leave, and Memphis, which is on the other end of the spectrum, sees more people leaving than coming to the city. Years ago, the Nashville area would win hands down. But now that housing prices have jumped, people are looking to other parts of the state. Chattanooga used to fly under the radar, but times have changed. The city continues growing quickly. Now, Northeast Tennessee is the hidden gem. A lot of people are moving to Tennessee from other states, and they're coming for a lot of reasons. But the most common things we hear are that they're looking for a lower cost of living, no state income tax, more conservative political environment, access to outdoor activities, and more moderate weather. Chattanooga does offer all these things in varying degrees, but so does the northeast part of the state. Why would you want to pick one area over the other? Well, that's why we're here. As a person who's lived roughly 20 years in each area, I know the pros and cons of each. Firstly, I'll quickly go over how each area is similar, and then we'll cover some of the biggest differences I've seen since leaving Chattanooga years ago. First up, the cost of living. As a state, Tennessee has no income tax on either earnings or retirement income. This benefit is one of the big 5 reasons people choose to relocate to our state. The cost of living is much lower in Tennessee versus the national average. In fact, Tennessee cost of living is 11.3% below the national average. But of course, the actual cost of living can vary depending on the specific area you pick. For example, Chattanooga's index is just 8% lower than the national average. The cost of living index in Johnson City, the largest metro area in Northeast Tennessee, is just 81.9 versus 88.4 for Chattanooga, an over 6% difference. Sullivan County, Tennessee, which contains our hometown of Bristol plus Kingsport, has an even lower cost of living index, which currently stands at 79.2. So, if saving money is one of your objectives, living in both Chattanooga and Northeast Tennessee will probably let you keep more money overall, but Northeast Tennessee wins the battle here. Years ago, one of the biggest draws of Chattanooga was the high-speed internet. For a while, the city offered the highest internet access speeds in the nation. However, that advantage is now gone as other cities have caught up. Most cities in our area have a fiber optic network. In Bristol, for example, the city's electrical utility offers speeds as high as 10 gigabyte, and prices are very reasonable. A lot of people looking at Chattanooga are taking into account the natural beauty. Chattanooga is in fact sometimes called the Scenic City. The Tennessee River runs through the center of downtown, and you can see 3 local mountains from much of the area. Signal Mountain, Elder Mountain, and Lookout Mountain are within eyesight for most of downtown. The city's done a good job of developing the downtown riverfront also. Revamping the downtown started with the Tennessee Aquarium, and it kind of grew from there. The city is walk friendly as long as you stay close to the river and don't stray too far from the tourist areas. More on that later. It's a pretty town, and water activities and hiking are always close by. Chickamauga Lake is popular, and you'll find riverboats along with barges and tugboats running up and down the river. The local mountains are the home of the more expensive real estate in the area and can feel a bit exclusive at times. Particularly inside the city limits of Lookout Mountain and Signal Mountain, you'll find some very nice people, but also those with a lot of old money whose families have lived there for generations. I did a fair amount of real estate work on the mountains and sometimes found that the people are a bit protective of their lifestyle. The average highest income earners live on the mountains in the Chattanooga area. So why is this even something worth talking about? Chattanooga, to me, seems less cohesive as a community and a bit more fractured, partially based on class. It isn't something apparent in day-to-day life necessarily, but it's there. People in the valley looking up to those on the mountains and vice versa. Speaking of mountains, the mountains in the Chattanooga area and Northeast Tennessee are actually quite different. The elevation of the mountaintops in Chattanooga is around 1,700 to 1,800 feet above sea level, which is roughly the elevation of the foothills in Northeast Tennessee. The higher mountains in Northeast Tennessee can reach 5,000 to 6,000 feet in elevations. And the mountains in Northeast Tennessee are more plentiful and prominent since you're basically at the foot of the Appalachian Mountains, which runs for thousands of miles. It's a short drive to hop on the Appalachian Trail, as a matter of fact, and the outdoor opportunities in Northeast Tennessee are just so much greater since you're closer to national forests, state land, several lakes, trout streams, and more. Well, living in Chattanooga, I felt nearer the big cities than I do in Northeast Tennessee. Atlanta was just about 2 hours away, as was Nashville. However, personally, it was extremely rare I ever traveled to either city. I went to a couple of Atlanta Braves games, for example, but that was just about it. If you need to be close to a major city like Atlanta, then Chattanooga definitely wins out. Of course, if you rarely go, you can always jump on a plane at the Tri-Cities Airport and be in Atlanta in about 45 minutes. Chattanooga is the fourth largest city in the state, which leads to both pros and cons. You'll find a stronger job market overall with more diverse hiring opportunities in Chattanooga. I saw more progressive political views in Chattanooga than I see in Northeast Tennessee, and I'm not going to comment on whether that's a pro or con. It's just a fact based on my observations. The nightlife is somewhat better overall in Chattanooga if that's important to you. The downtown area has bars and restaurants at every turn. However, Johnson City rivals Chattanooga somewhat in this regard, thanks to ETSU, East Tennessee State University, which has over 10,000 college students. The university brings a younger vibe to the city, which means more breweries, pubs, and urban restaurants than you'll find throughout the rest of the Tri-Cities, which tend to be a little more small town in feel. So why am I so glad that I left Chattanooga and moved to the Tri-Cities? Some of these things I realized while I was living there, and others I didn't appreciate until I moved away. Chattanooga is a nice town in a lot of ways, and I don't hate it, but I'd never move back there now. The first reason I'm glad I left Chattanooga is the traffic. There's no comparison between Chattanooga and Northeast Tennessee when it comes to traffic. People coming from either Alabama, Georgia, Middle Tennessee, and traveling either north or south on 75 will almost certainly pass through Chattanooga. Add to this the roughly 425,000 residents that live in the metro area, and you have daily traffic jams. If you don't mind sitting in traffic most mornings and afternoons, then Chattanooga won't bother you. No, it isn't Nashville or Atlanta, but I've been stuck for over an hour before more than once, thanks to nearly daily wrecks around the Ridge, as it's known, or other typical spots on the interstate. If you watched our videos before, you know that after being back in Bristol for over 3 years, I've yet to be stuck in traffic once, not once. There's some traffic in the area at rush hour for sure, but nothing that's going to waste hours of your time each week. And as I get older, I appreciate more and more how valuable time is. And spending it sitting in traffic rather than being with family or friends just isn't going to happen. The second reason I'm glad to be out of Chattanooga, crime. I moved to Chattanooga in '97. I lived in the northern suburbs for a while and was somewhat isolated from most of the issues, although I did have something stolen from the yard once. Over my years there, I gradually saw the emergence of gangs and the violence that comes along with them. You see a lot of graffiti in town, and much of it's from gangs that are marking their territory. I never felt particularly unsafe in the tourist area downtown near the river, nor on the North Shore. The police seem to do a good job of protecting this part of town, which is no surprise since a large part of Chattanooga's industry is tourism. Keeping those areas safe around the aquarium and the popular tourist areas was very important, so you didn't see nearly as much crime there as in a lot of the rest of the town. More than once though, while showing homes, I would show a home with squatters that had been living there, and I saw drugs lying around and signs of where the people had broken into the house. I carried a gun with me anytime I was showing houses in most of the downtown area, as well as parts of North Georgia just south of town. If you go on to crimegrade.org, you'll find an interactive map that shows you the more dangerous parts of town and those that are more safe. No surprise to me, Lookout Mountain and Signal Mountain are the bright spots. Property values are significantly higher in those two areas, and crime is rated A. Much of the downtown, East Ridge, and the areas heading north towards Harrison are rated F. Overall, the city has a grade of D+. From the website, a crime occurs every 23 minutes in the metro area. In ranking the safest cities in Tennessee, one site has Bristol at number 17, with Chattanooga fourth from last, behind only Memphis, Athens, and Dixon. Now, I'm not saying that everywhere in Chattanooga is scary and you constantly live in a state of fear. You learn to avoid certain parts of town if possible and be more aware of your surroundings there though. If you're the type of person that watches the local news, it can be a bit depressing. Another reason I'm glad I left Chattanooga, schools. It isn't that I have any school-age children right now, but I think that schools are a reflection of the community and its government. Half of the high schools are rated at a 5 out of 10 or below. 16 of 23 middle schools are a 5 or below, and only 9 out of 47 elementary schools are ranked above a 5. Many of the affluent families send their children to private schools, which are excellent, but pricey. I suspect Chattanooga has some of the best private schools in the nation, as a matter of fact. However, it's going to cost you. One example is Baylor, which covers 6th through the 12th grade. Tuition is just over $28,000 a year, and if you need boarding also, the annual total is just over $57,000. Another private school in the area, Macaulay, will cost you over $30,000 in tuition annually, and if you board on campus, you'll spend over $60,000 a year. A typical middle-class family is probably going to struggle to come up with that much money each year. So they're left picking certain parts of town to get the best schools. Due to the poor schools in the area, school zones play a more prominent role in home prices than they seem to do in Northeast Tennessee. One example is Normal Park area in Chattanooga. Located on the North Shore, just north of downtown, this particular school zone saw a huge run-up in home values and a basically flat to down real estate market due to one highly ranked elementary and middle school. Of course, the high school in the area wasn't the greatest, but the middle and elementary schools could make a 30 to 40% difference in home prices compared to a home nearby that wasn't zoned for that school. Another reason I'm glad to be living in Northeast Tennessee, air quality and the allergies. Chattanooga is number 9 in the country on the list of cities with the highest pollen count. If you have allergy problems, this might not be the city for you. The city was named the dirtiest city in America back in 1969. That's when the foundries, railroad, and manufacturing factories were the norm. Now the air quality is much better now, largely due to those industries all shutting down through the years. However, one of the reasons the city's air quality is still lacking has to do with 3 factors. Firstly, the topography. The city sits between Lookout, Elder, and Signal Mountains and the ridge, which helps to hold in pollution and allergens. It's like a big bowl. The second cause of poor air quality has to do with the amount of sheer traffic that moves through the area. Located at the junction of I-24 and I-75, the main interstate through downtown sees nearly 100,000 vehicles daily, and I-75 sees nearly 140,000 cars daily. The ozone levels are high during a lot of the summer, and I remember air quality warnings for days on end during my time there. How about the weather? The weather in Chattanooga isn't all that much different from Northeast Tennessee. Chattanooga gets less snow, as you might imagine, given how much further south the city lies. And the average annual snowfall in Chattanooga is 3.6 inches versus around 11 inches over a winter in Northeast Tennessee. I like a bit of snow during winters, so that doesn't bother me. During the summers, the average high and low in August is 88 and 73 in Chattanooga. Bristol's average high and low that month are 85 and 63. Now that's a big difference between 73 and 63 overnight. Those cooler nights really make a difference during the summer. You can open your windows at night for much of the summer if you like. If you're worried about severe weather, tornadoes are much more likely in Chattanooga, unfortunately. I lived there during the 2011 tornado breakout, and large parts of the area were hit very hard. If you check historical records, a total of 65 tornado events with a magnitude 2 or higher have happened near Chattanooga. Bristol has had 12. Chattanooga isn't a bad place to live. I just think Northeast Tennessee is better overall based on things that are important to me. If you need to be closer to big cities like Atlanta and don't mind the traffic and higher crime, then maybe Chattanooga is a better option. I've done my time in the big cities of Atlanta and Chicago, and living there doesn't appeal to me any longer. Even though Chattanooga is a big step down from big city living, it just isn't far enough down for me. When I lived in Chattanooga, I can't say I hated it there. It's a fantastic town in a lot of ways. I just didn't realize how life would feel so different by moving. You get settled in one place and you'll find yourself insulated from much of the world around you. You just don't know what you're missing out on until you leave. Now, I truly appreciate every day. No fighting traffic. The people to me seem more friendly and welcoming. I prefer the weather. I feel like I'm living in a small town, but there's nothing I need that I can't drive to in at most 30 minutes. And I'm surrounded by nature and beautiful scenery at every turn. It's hard to imagine a better place to live. If you'd like to learn more about living in Northeast Tennessee, then watch this next video where we'll go into more detail about what we have to offer here and give you a list of the 9 things you need to know about living in Northeast Tennessee. This is Scott Henninger with the Home Team, brokered by eXp Realty. Kim and I specialize in helping buyers relocate to Tennessee. If you'd like more info or if we can help you in any way, reach out to us. We'd love to help.